If a creator explains his intent but nobody gets it, is it still art? Hey everybody, this is a topic that I have been meaning to do and sort of have been thinking about percolating on for a little while, and the date that I am putting this out and the timing of it has led me to decide to sort of do that thing that I very rarely do, which is sort of integrate the two sides of my life. So what that means is that for this video and for the purposes of it, you're going to see me a little bit different, because if you've never seen my Q&A video, this might be news to you, but my name is Nathaniel, and my personal sense of gender does not stay put. It kind of wavers and wanders. So I am presenting this way because today is national. Well, it's not even national. It might even be international. It's the Transgender Day of Visibility. I suppose a quick bit of definitions. Different people use transgender in different ways. Some people use it as a blanket term for basically anyone who does not rigidly define themselves as cisgender, i.e., identifying as the sex that you were biologically born into. Others use it very specifically to mean someone who is actually transitioning from the sex they were born as to another, and that is not me. Like I said, my sense of gender just kind of meanders around. It doesn't really stay put. But because of the occasion, I thought it was finally time to pull the trigger on talking about creator intent. How much does it matter? What initially got me thinking about this was something that I've actually already talked about, which was the whole thing with it being revealed that the upcoming sequel to Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is not going to directly address the fact that Dumbledore had a homosexual attraction and love for the villain character of Grindelwald. That's part of their past at the time this movie will be set. And this is something that we know. J.K. Rowling has said this, but it's yet to appear actually in the text. It was not specifically ever referenced in the books, and now even though there's a movie coming out with both these characters in it, it's still not going to be explicitly stated, which is something that has been upsetting for many LGBTQ fans of Harry Potter, because it feels like they don't have the strength of their own conviction, and they're not backing up what they said the thing was. I don't want to rehash all of that here now, but it's what got me thinking, because I have no doubt that it was never the intent of Rowling or David Yates, who's the director on these films. It was never their intent to cause distress for LGBTQ fans. I'm sure it was never in their minds that what they were doing was going to be seen by LGBTQ fans as failing to represent them. But it kind of doesn't matter if that was their intent or not, because that's how it looks. And that's how it reads. And there's a funny thing about intent, because I don't always find it useful. I actually very rarely get excessively hung up on intent. Basically, the only time that I try and figure out a creator, a writer, a director's intent behind something is if I just can't figure it out. Like if I watch a movie or a TV show and I go, what was that? I'll look up what I can find about the intent to see if I can make heads or tails of it. But if I come away from something feeling like I've come away with an experience and this was my experience, it usually doesn't matter to me too much what the intended experience was. And interestingly, sort of moving away for a moment from the sort of more controversial stuff, LGBTQ issues and interpretations and intent around that, and just talking more geeky stuff, which is more the wheelhouse of this channel, I have run into this argument with people regarding a number of movies. A couple of Zack Snyder movies like Sucker Punch and Batman v Superman, and also The Last Jedi, which I'll cite as well because I don't want you to think I'm just picking on Zack Snyder. But I've seen a number of arguments, very good ones, very well realized. I've seen whole video essays explaining the intent and the meaning and what the goals and why things were the way they were for films like Batman v Superman, The Last Jedi. And I can read those and go, you know what, you're probably right that was what they were trying for. I would say it doesn't matter what they were trying for because what they delivered didn't work. And I'm going to use an analogy that I've used in a number of other places. I don't think I've done it on video before, so let me get it on the record here. And that is that I tend to think of it in those situations where significant portions, if not the majority, of audiences appear to have come away with an experience that was not the experience intended to be had by the creators. I tend to liken it to, say you are a comedian and you tell a joke, to a group and nobody laughs, but you know it's a good joke. I mean, you know exactly how it works and why it's funny, but nobody laughed. And so what you then do is you do what they say kills comedy, but you explain it. You explain the joke. Look, here's why it's funny. Here was this and this, and now it's this. And the audience goes, oh, okay, yeah, that is funny, I guess. And maybe you've explained how the thing that you did was in fact funny, but it doesn't matter because they didn't laugh when you told it. If it only works after being explained, that to me, unless you're deliberately trying to be obtuse, then that is a failure of the delivery method. And that to me, like, again, to go back to the joke analogy, you probably told the joke wrong. It could very well be funny in its construction and on paper and in theory, but if nobody laughed, maybe you didn't set it up right. Maybe there was a detail you left out that was a big part of what brought up the humor up. Maybe you accidentally spoiled the punchline before you got there, but if nobody laughed, something went wrong. But of course, that's where the arguments tend to come in, with one side saying, well, it's the audience's fault for not getting it, and the other side saying it's the communicator's fault for not doing their part well. And as with so many things, as with my gender, I tend to fall more in the middle, which is that I think more often than not, when a piece of art, be it a movie or a book or a comic or whatever, is taken in a way that was not what the original creator intended, it is usually a mix of the creator not being completely clear with what they were trying to do, and the audience possibly not being on the same wavelength as that. So, like, for myself, there are things that I have watched, things that I have seen that I know, for me, I just came at them from the wrong headspace. And there are times that I know flat out that is not on the creator. That's on me. So, like, this is the only example I can come up with off the top of my head, but like when they debuted the costume for Jodie Whittaker playing the Doctor on Doctor Who, my thing that I immediately thought of was Mork from Mork and Mindy, because of the combination of the colors and the suspenders, or braces if you're in the UK. But I know that's not what was intended. And I know that's just me, because that's my baggage. That's my cultural reference point. That's what I experienced, but I also know it wasn't what was intended. And I'm coming at it from an angle that is not the angle it was intended to be come at from. So that is a case where that's on me. But then, you've got stuff where people say things that, or put out pieces of art that fail to connect, that are supposed to be funny but aren't, are supposed to be scary but aren't. And I think to a certain degree you end up with creators who are overly defensive, because if you've put something out and people are not taking it the way you intended them to, sometimes it's easier to just go, well, you people didn't get it, you're the problem, rather than look inside and go, crap, did I screw this up with how I put it out there? But the other thing is, ultimately at the end of the day, I honestly don't think creator intent matters very much. It matters academically. It matters if you want to better understand the function of a piece of art. It matters if you personally wish to better understand the thought process and the mentality of the artist who created it. And sometimes that can lead to a better understanding of the art. I would say not always, but sometimes it can. But I don't think that can or should ever alter your experience of taking in a piece of art. So, an example for me, a piece of art that was massively important to me, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I know, shocking. But I saw that movie when I was 13 years old. And I saw it at a time in my life when I really kind of needed it. And that movie means a great deal to me, because I'm not sure there's any piece of film that better exemplifies the concept of let your freak flag fly, and we're all just weird. And it means a lot to me. I actually went to Boston Comic Con in 2017 and met Tim Curry and some of the other cast members, Patricia Quinn, Nell Campbell, Barry Bostwick. It was really amazing. The reason I bring it up is in some of the things that he's said in more recent years and over time. Richard O'Brien, who played Riff Raff and also wrote the original stage play that the movie is based off of, has said a number of things in terms of his views on transgender people that there are a lot to unpack, but they're notions that were not things I particularly was comfortable hearing said by him. And again, I don't really want to unpack all that now, because I think in a lot of ways his views are more complicated than some people have painted them as. But, realizing what his feelings on, transgender, actual transsexual people, people who were born, say, genetically a man and firmly identify as a woman, or vice versa, that they are not the thing they identify as, that transgender women are not women. That and knowing that his belief does bring in the fact that his intent behind what Rocky Horror Picture Show means or was meant to mean probably did not include any sense of validation for transgender people. That was probably in no way any part of his intent. But I don't care. And again, I don't identify in transgender in that I'm firmly moving towards one or the other, but I have known more than a few people who are full on trans, actually living full time as the gender that isn't the one they were born as, and this movie means as much to them as it does to me. And his intent not being to empower those sorts of people with those sorts of feelings doesn't matter, because that's what he did. And unfortunately, intent not mattering can cut both ways in that way, which I think in some ways is something we're getting to with an increased scrutiny of sexual harassment concerns, because a classic excuse and smokescreen was it was meant as a compliment. I didn't mean any offense. You still hear that one sometimes. It doesn't matter if you meant offense. Your intent doesn't matter. What you did, what you caused, the feelings and emotions that you cause in other people, that is not yours to dictate. You may have a preferred emotional reaction that they have to what it is you're doing, or what you've said, or what story you've told, or what movie you've made. But you, at the end of the day, don't get ownership of what other people feel based off your things. And that is why I do think ultimately artist intent does not matter very much unless you're writing an academic paper. From the perspective of simply taking in entertainment, of watching or reading or listening to a piece of art and having it move you, how it moves you is true for you. And it doesn't matter if that isn't what the creator intended. Them meaning something else, something different, does not invalidate what you experience, what you feel. And unfortunately, as I said, that can go in both directions. That does mean that people can take your art and twist it into something awful. That also isn't what you intended. And their ability to do that may or may not be a reflection of the quality or the issues with your piece of art. But ultimately, they can and will do that regardless of what you meant. I think The Matrix is a good example of that, because at this point we know that the Wachowskis, both of them, are transgender women. And while they haven't spoken specifically on that, it does seem to be very clear now that The Matrix, the first one, is very much a trans narrative. It's about someone who sees himself not in the body and the existence that he has, who identifies with another name. The villain keeps insisting on calling him by the name that's on all of his documentation, his driver's license, his birth certificate. What's his big moment of defiance? It's saying to Agent Smith, "My name is Neo." It is a trans narrative. But at the same time, at the time that it came out, there were people who were not transgender, who saw this empowering fantasy of people who felt misunderstood taking up arms and taking down the system. And that was a message that could be twisted and embraced by people who were very much not the people it was meant to be empowered by. Fight Club, very much the same thing. Anyone who has ever said to you that they think Tyler Durden is awesome and he's an idol of theirs, they very much did not take Fight Club as intended by David Fincher. But saying that to them doesn't suddenly mean that what they felt watching it, even if it's a complete twisting of the original artist's intent, it doesn't invalidate that. It may very well be a viable reading of the piece of art. Or it may indicate that the piece of art is wildly misunderstood. And if that's the case, could the artist have done more to make it better understood? Maybe, maybe not. But artist intent is, for me, it's trivia. I deal with the art as much as I can. And I say that even as someone who actually doesn't separate the artist from the art. I don't necessarily believe in that, yet at the same time I will say that artist intent doesn't matter. Because I do think that if you are going to experience a piece of art, that ultimately all that matters is what that art does for you, how it speaks to you, what it says to you, what message it gives you, and what the personal life or triumphs or failings of or intent of the artist was. They're not part of the equation anymore. Ultimately, when you experience a piece of art, there's only two things in that relationship. There's the art and there's you. That's it. So that's kind of it, I think. I don't have a perfectly worded final button to end that on, but on this Transgender Day of Visibility, I wanted to sort of go over this and talk this one out. Like I said, it's a topic I've been meaning to get to for a little while now. So, again, guys, as I've said the last few times, I think it was only one other time I actually, literally let my hair down. But as happened then, I will remind you, I'm not suddenly going to start doing the channel looking like this. This is something that I did here on this occasion because it is an occasion and to mark the day. So, if you have curiosity about this other side of my life, if this was news to you, if you didn't see my Q&A video from back early in the year, I have another YouTube channel called Vera Wild. There'll be a link down below. There'll be all the other links that you're used to seeing, like Patreon and Twitter and my podcast and all that stuff. So, what are your thoughts on artist intent, creator intent? How much does it matter? How much does finding out what an artist meant with a piece of art, how much does that impact your thoughts on it and your feelings about it? Whatever your thoughts on this are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. If you're gonna comment on this and how this kind of threw you off, fine, you can go ahead and do that. Just please don't be a jerk about it. Even if you're confused, just don't be a jerk. So, yeah, that'll do it. Until next time, this council is adjourned.